So the overall summary of the examination, if you break it down to steps, is getting the child adequately exposed, watching them stand from the front, looking at their coronal alignment, are they in genu, varum or valgum, watching them walk away and towards you, looking for in-toeing and out-toeing, watching them run away from you and towards you, looking at their overall function and see how awkward they are or whether they're very stable. Then you get them to sit down in front of you on the ground to see how they sit, if they sit in a W position or not, as in femoral anteversion. Then you lie them on the couch supine and you normally examine the spine, hip, knee and foot and ankle joints. And then you'd flip them over, and for torsional profile, in the prone position, you start with a thigh-foot axis to assess for tibial torsion, then the heel bisector line to look for metatarsus adductus, and finally, internal and external rotation of the hips to look for femoral anteversion. And then you flip them back and look at the legs, again for coronal alignment, without the effects of gravity, to see whether they have genu, varum or valgum, measuring the intercondylar distance of their knees or the intermalleolar distance at the ankles. Brilliant. So if you come and stand just here, so when you look at him, you can see that his kneecaps are slightly pointing inwards. Actually, just stand normally, just stand naturally, that's it. And he tends to want to stand, he's adjusting himself, but he tends to want to stand with his feet pointing inwards. But generally we call these a squinting patelli, so the kneecaps are pointing inwards. And also his overall alignment, I'm looking to see if he's got genu, valgum or varum, but he hasn't. It's pretty much really good alignment. Now I'm going to watch you walk over there and back, and you can see in toes on both sides, and his patelli come together, his kneecaps come together. Just one more time for me. So that's an in-toeing gait. We're looking at the foot progression angle, which is the angle of the foot while he's progressing forward, and it's turned inwards about 20 to 30 degrees. Can you run there and back for me? So as he runs, actually, he runs quite well, although his knees tend to touch each other and he tends to fall over sometimes, as you said. Sometimes we call that an egg beater gait. It's an awkward gait as they run around, but that looks very good. Now, can you sit down on the ground for me?
My hurts.
That hurts if you sit like that. Can you sit like this with the legs behind you? There, that's called the W position. So children with femoral anteversion, where there's a lot of movement inward of the hips, tend to sit in a W position for that's much more comfortable for them to sit. Let's get you up. And let's get you to lie down here. So normally in a complete exam, we'd look at the spine and make sure there's no scoliosis, examine the hips and the knees and the feet and make sure those joints move well. For the purposes of this, I'll just get you to turn over onto your tummy. And what we do here is actually start by putting the foot like the knees to 90 degrees, and we'll look at the angle. So if I take just this left foot, we'll look at the alignment of the foot versus the thigh, and that completely lines up. So there's no internal tibial torsion, or indeed external tibial torsion. Then we look at the foot itself, and we draw a line down the middle of the foot, and that should drop between the second and third toes, and that bisects the foot. If they had metatarsus adductus, he'd be over this way, and that would be fixed. You wouldn't be able to correct that. So we have no metatarsus adductus, we have no tibial torsion. So if the foot's normal, the tibia is normal, the problem must be in the femur. So if we examine the femur, and you'll see the internal rotation, let's do both at the same time. Internal rotation is to nearly 90 degrees. External rotation, and that we do one at a time, is to only 20, 30 degrees. So he's got much more internal rotation than external rotation, which means he tends to in-toe as he walks from femoral anteversion. Now, in fact, I'll show you my feet. I've got femoral retroversion, so I can turn out a really long way. I can only turn in about 20, 30 degrees. So I tend to walk with an out-toeing gait, and that's normal for me, and this is normal for him. If you just sit up for me, that's great. Now, the other thing we do last, if you just lie down there now, on your back, is to check the alignment. We looked at coronal alignment while he was standing to make sure he wasn't in varus or valgus. We confirmed that with him on the couch, and have a look at the line. We're really looking for the intermalleolar distance. So if this was more than 8 centimeters, then we'd think about genu valgum. If the separation between the knee was more than 6 centimeters, we'd think about genu varum or bow legs. But he's got a completely straight leg. That's good. And just stand up for me. The last thing I'm going to do is to show you that he's also ligamentously lax. We have the modified Baton criteria. It's a 9-point criteria system to looking at ligamentous laxity. Okay, so There are several criteria in the modified Baton to look for ligamentous laxity. We start by looking at the thumb, and the thumb should touch the forearm, and then you get a point for that. If it does that on the other side, you get 2 points, and it does that there too. And we look at the little finger, and there's hyperextension of the metacarpophalangeal joint. So the little finger metacarpophalangeal joint, you get a point. And again, you get a point for this side. So that's 4 points so far. And if we look at the elbow, that's normal. It hyperextends to at least 10 degrees. You get another point, that's 5, and 1 for that side. So that's 6. So that's 6 so far. Can you lock your knees back? So he hyperextends at the knees, he gets a point each for that. And the last point for the 9 is, can you touch the floor without bending your knees, which he can very easily. So he's very ligamentally lax as well. So he's got a combination of in-toeing with persistent femoral anteversion and ligamentous laxity. Thank you very much, Kalia.